How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to make a video about scales, more specifically how they're applied in melodic improvisation and composition. I'm going to talk about some of the problems that I've ran into, and I think a lot of people run into with the way they think about scales, what they think scales are going to solve for them. And I'm going to present to you an exercise that has helped me in practicing scales in a way that's maybe a little bit more applicable to actual building melodies and playing over tunes. But firstly, if you like my video, hit the like button, think about subscribing to my channel, and share it with a friend. I also offer online and in-person guitar lessons if you're in the Greater Toronto area. I can cover a lot of topics from flat picking technique to bluegrass, improvising, composing, arranging, all that good stuff. So don't be shy, hit me up. So when we first start learning how to improvise, we're introduced to this kind of chord-scale relationship idea where over a G major chord, you can play the notes of a G major scale. And we're told to learn that all over the fretboard, and if we're an eager student, we're going to learn it all over and think, okay, well now I'm ready to improvise, right? Well, wrong. Simply knowing where the notes of a key are, while useful, is not giving you everything you need to know. It's kind of like knowing a bunch of words but not knowing how to actually build a sentence. It's giving you what you could play, but it's leaving out what you should play, and more importantly, when you should play it. So in melodic composition, harmony is implied by which notes are landing on downbeats. If we have a phrase that has a G on a downbeat, or a strong beat, whatever, and a B and a D, that's a G major triad, and underneath that you would be able to play a G major chord. And so if we look at the G major scale, and we just take those first 5 notes, this is referred to as a G major pentachord, which just means a series of 5 notes, pentachord. And if we look at these, we've got downbeat. On every downbeat, if we were to run this in 1/8 notes, we've got chord tones on every downbeat. We've got a root on the downbeat, a third on a downbeat, and a fifth on a downbeat. And then if we go back down, the third and the root on a downbeat again. And so this is a very useful little musical cell, and it gets used a lot. And this is already more musical than just going straight up and down the scale. Like if we have the tune Orange Blossom Special in A, the phrase is kind of, and that's basically just right up and down that little pentachord. The first 5 notes of an A major scale is straight up and down. That coincides with the A chord, and then it resolves to this 7th of the E chord. If we take a look at the tune Forked Deer, over the D chord in that phrase, it's, and then it resolves to, that root, but it's, again, walking up that, the tune Whiskey Before Breakfast. It's in the same key. You can play it down here, it's the same thing. It's just those first 5 notes of a major scale, and since there's a bit more time on that harmony, it just kind of goes up, and then goes back down. And so if we want to continue going up our scale, this is maybe where we're going to run into problems. So we're in G, and we're all the way up here on our 5th note of the scale, the D note. And if we want to continue running up our scale in 1/8 notes, we're going to start landing on non-chord tones. We'll land on the 7th, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th. And in triad bass harmony, so when we're dealing with chords with 3 notes, as we do typically in bluegrass, these notes are, if you're landing on them, they're going to not imply the chord you're playing over. They're going to either need to be resolved tones, or they're simply just going to imply a different harmony. Like if you play this over a G chord, you're playing, that sounds like a type of D7 that wants to resolve to that in this style of music. And so the solution that we typically deal with when we're trying to continue making linear lines and landing on chord tones is we can either add a note or take a note out of a typical major scale. So if we add a note, we get a bebop scale, which sounds like, that's a common major bebop scale. And I'm not going to really go into these too much today because they're more applicable to jazz and bebop, although they are used nowadays in bluegrass, and they can be. But if you're interested in them, check out a guy named Barry Harris. He's a jazz educator from the 20th century and had a very in-depth way of thinking about these scales. And the exercise that I'm going to present later is actually inspired by the way he had his students practice their bebop scales. And so if we take a note out, we're going to be left with a hexatonic scale, which is very common in bluegrass and old-time fiddle tunes. And so there are two common ones in bluegrass and again, old-time fiddle tunes. The first one is if we take a major scale and we take out the 7th note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This F sharp. So we take that note out and we're left with this. I kind of like to call this one the Bill Monroe hexatonic because he used this one a lot. In the tune Roanoke, you've got that's basically starting on that scale and going down an octave and then going up a third above, down again, and then resolving on this note. There's no skips or anything. It's straight up and down. And it sounds very coherent. It's clearly outlining a G chord. He also uses this as the pickup to Gold Rush. So he's targeting this high D, and he does that by starting an octave lower and just walking up that scale. So we skip this note here. There we are. And so the second scale is if we remove the 4th degree. So again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. This C note, we take that out and we're left with this. And that's in the tune Temperance Reel, which is the same as Billy in the Low Ground, just the walk up. If we were to put a capo on the 3rd fret and play at a G position, we've got the New Camptown Races. And so yeah, that's very common as well. And so now what you can do is you can start running up and down these scales and kind of mixing and matching them as well, starting on different notes, starting them on different beats of the measure, and immediately start making this type of linear vocabulary that's going to line up with the chord you want to imply. One cool thing that I like to do is to run up one scale and then down the other. So a good one is to start on the Billy in the Low Ground scale and then go down the Bill Monroe scale. So you've got I looked at Clarence White used to do a lot, would walk up, would be this one. He walks up his Billy in the Low Ground scale and then just adds his little hexachord or pentachord we were talking about earlier. So again, it's just yeah. So you can mix and match these and start thinking of them and practicing these, and they're going to immediately deliver you some better results as far as making coherent linear language. And so getting into our exercise, as I said earlier, this was inspired by Barry Harris in the way that he would have his students practice their bebop skills. What he would do is he'd take the chords to a tune, and he would have his students apply a bebop scale over each chord and run the tune in time, going up and down the scale as many times needed as to fill the tune. So the way I do this in bluegrass is I'll take a common bluegrass progression, so in the key of G, 1, 4, 5, 1, and I use, like for the basic version, let's just use that little pentachord we used earlier, this 5-note major scale kind of cell. And we'll apply one of those to each chord. So over the G, we've got over the C, over the D, and then you run it in time over the tune. So I'll give you a little example. 2, 3, 4. So that's one chorus. You may have noticed I kind of have a little figure here where I hold this note. And this is the basic figure that I want you to use because I don't want you to think about connecting the chords at first. I think it's useful to be able to practice this exercise in a way where you have this thing to play for the G, you have this thing to play for the C, you have this thing to play for the D chord. Because it's going to get you thinking about what you're doing here, and then you're moving on, and then you don't have to worry about that step in between of connecting them to, which you can get on about later. But once you've got the basic version, you learn it in different octaves. You maybe get this down here, you can do it up here. And then once you know that, you can kind of play a little game where you're just improvising, and it's kind of like improvising with training wheels on, where you have something to play over each chord. You're just picking and choosing which octave you're playing it, and you're kind of following your ear where it wants to go. And so I'll give you a little example of how I would do that. 2, 3, 4. And so that sounds like an exercise, but it sounds like in some way like there's potential for music making there. And so as we want to get more advanced, we can start becoming more musical with it. We can use our hexatonic skills from earlier. To cover a bit more range. We can go up one and down one. All kinds of fun stuff, but at first you want to stick to the basic version, and once you're comfortable, then you move on. And then you can even start building lines this way, connecting chords. There's a lot of other stuff you can do. I'm just going to leave you with this basic version for now. If you have any questions, anything that's confusing, definitely leave me a comment. If you want to get into some more in-depth ways about this stuff, you can always reach out. We can set up an online lesson. But yeah, I hope there's a lot for you to sink your teeth into with this exercise and the thoughts I had earlier. And yeah, if you like this video, again, hit the like button, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But until next time, happy picking.